So I describe myself as a recovering perfectionist. I say recovering because I still recognize I have some perfectionist traits, and that might be part of my personality. But I've realized that some of those traits are re-emerging, shall we say. As I've shared with you, I am going on a sober journey. I've not been drinking alcohol for the past almost 11 months. And what I've come to realize is that my non-drinking at times can fall into those realms of control where I am restricting myself and makes me kind of question my journey with regards to my sobriety. And it's realizing that, yep, I am a perfectionist, and I'm realizing, am I applying those perfectionist traits to my sobriety? As in, I'm setting myself this goal, so therefore, then I'm trying to reach it, whatever that end point may be. Now, I recognize, particularly around the element of control, I am, in some respects, quite. I do tend to control things, and if things are outside my control, it kind of sets me into a bit of a tears. I can feel a bit overwhelmed. I like the predictability of things, and I don't like change. So when it comes to my perfectionism, I can kind of box things off, and this is how things are meant to be. So with my journey, I'm realizing that I'm being a little controlling with myself. Now I know, and I kind of liken this to a phase in my teenage years where I restricted food. It wasn't a point of calorie counting as such, but I realized in my teenage years, especially like in my last couple of years of high school, I had developed where I was really controlling what I was eating, and if things didn't match then I disregard things. And I feel and recognize some of those traits coming back up with this. And I've noticed over the last couple of weeks, last couple of months really, where I've been real questioning why I'm doing it. Am I doing it to control myself, box things off, or am I doing it because it's part of my healing journey? Now, I know that when I took that initial step to stop drinking last year, December, it was because I felt it was part of my healing journey. I wanted to consciously turn up and make the decision not to drink. So therefore, then I felt empowered in making life decisions. So that was my original kind of mindset of how I got to that point, December 2022. And I feel as the months have gone past, not that it's coming into a point of like kind of restriction and almost like not punishment for better of a word, like, okay, right, you're not going to drink, Marie. You can't have a drink. You've said you're not going to drink. And I don't think it's as cold as that, but it's just made me kind of sit back and observe a little bit and think, okay, why are we doing this? Is it a control element or is it part of my healing? And I don't know whether that's just because I'm at that point now. I'm almost at 11 months and I've not missed alcohol at all. But it's kind of like, am I doing it to, like I say, in effect, punish myself and not have a drink when I really want one? Not that I really want one. It's a kind of like a dilemma, that point where I'm pondering. And this might just be a point that people come to when they are going alcohol free or they are becoming sober, that you may come to that point where you think, okay, why am I here? What, and I'm not even thinking about what my end goal is, But it's that kind of, at the moment, I recognize it's coming, it's feeling a bit restrictive, like going without something. And I'm having to keep coming back to, okay, my initial reason why I did it was because I want to prolong my life. I want to live a healthier life that's healthier, as in emotionally, physically. And I can recognize that I do feel so much better without having alcohol factoring in it. And I was never a big drinker in the first place. I was very much a social drinker, but it hasn't changed my how I turn up socially. If anything, it's made me feel a little more engaged and more a part of things in some respects, because I feel so level going into things. I feel more consistent. Like, even if I'm turning up to a new situation, that new situation is less intimidating because I'm the most authentic now, turning up to it, rather than thinking, oh, have a drink and judge courage. Or let me just take the edge off. Let me do this. Let me do that. Whereas now I don't have any of that. I just rock up, take a breath, rock up to these situations, social events, and I turn up as I am and how I'm feeling on that day. If I'm not feeling something, then I won't go, rather than just turn up for the sake of it. So I think I'm turning up far more authentically now, but I'm having this push pull about this kind of restriction that I'm placing on myself. At the moment, it's falling into that kind of restrictive realm. And it's that I'm at odds with, because I haven't felt like that before. And like I say, it may be just the fact, that kind of reflection of where I am now, as reaffirming why I'm doing it and why I'm making this choice for myself, reaffirming and coming back to that, to then enable me then to keep doing the work, and realizing it's an ongoing thing. It's not, this is it. It's not the magic wand. It's ongoing. And perhaps I need to go back to that and think, this is an ongoing process. This isn't the end. This is part of your journey. And having that kind of, why am I doing it? That kind of, it's just that kind of shaky ground, I suppose. And it's making me feel a little uncertain about it. And I think it's that's kind of like grinding with me at the moment, and kind of like reverberating, is that the right word? And going over, okay, so what is this stirring up for me? Why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling that it's all of a sudden that kind of restriction that I've enforced on myself? But it's my choice. I can opt out at any point. I haven't signed up to something, and it's a process. I'd come across a social media post a few months ago, and I will have to go back and have a look to see who wrote this post. Now, they had likened their a journey of sobriety as being like running a marathon. You can run a marathon. So a marathon is 26, is it 26.2 miles? If you're running, and I say inverted commas, a marathon, if you stop to walk, you don't then go back to the start of the marathon. You still continue. It's just a little brief, a little brief hiatus. You're just breaking a little bit. You're walking. You're still completing the marathon. And it was a really good analogy to put to your journey with sobriety. Just because you're saying you're going to you do it and you start it, doesn't mean there may not be bumps in the road. There may be not detours. There may be little twists you may have. You may fall off the wagon, for want of a better phrase, and then you can start again. So, to use the analogy of a marathon, when you run a marathon, you do not go back to the beginning when you start walking at mile 10. You continue on your journey to reach the end of your marathon. And I just thought it was a real good analogy. And I thought, that is exactly right. I mean, I say my sobriety started on the 26th of December 2022, when I consciously made that decision not to drink anymore at all. But my journey towards that point started in August 2022. No, sorry, August 2020, when I was becoming more mindful of my drinking and having longer periods where I was abstaining from drinking alcohol. So that's when it started, and this is where I am. So this is the longest period of almost 11 months where I haven't drank. So it's an ongoing journey. And I think it's okay to reflect on that. And that's where I come back into that perfectionism. And I'm thinking, is this restricted type thing that's coming up for me? Is this coming from my stance of perfectionism? And is this where it's coming up now for me? Before, perfectionism has come up in how I have my interactions with people, perhaps, or my parenting, certain kind of expectations I have for myself and for other people's as well. So I think that's where my perfectionism come into play before. And I also liken, so perfectionism is kind of a sibling of procrastination and people pleasing. And I recognize I've dipped into all three of them, if not at all the same time, different elements. So I'm recognizing perfectionism at the moment, coming up with regards to this feeling that I have around my sober journey. People pleasing. Okay, people pleasing. I'm recognizing even now I do fall into that people pleasing mode. Now it's not intentionally, it's subconsciously, where I realize that sometimes I have to ask myself if I'm telling somebody something and I kind of sit on a kind of like teetering on the edge a little bit of, am I telling them because I want that accolade coming back at me? Or am I telling them just to give them the information? So I have to sometimes do it through a filter with myself. And again, it's having that self-awareness and recognizing why I am posting something on social media, why I am sending that email to tell somebody what I'm doing. And it's kind of like going through that filter for myself. And I'm doing it and I have to kind of check in with myself. I'm doing this to inform somebody. It doesn't matter what the response that I get back. I'm just letting them know where I'm at. And sometimes I recognize that I've done things to get the accolade, to get the praise. I'm like, why are we slipping into that people pleasing behavior? Even though at the time when I'm doing it, I'll do it. And then when I sit and like think about it afterwards, I'm like, oh no, that's where I've slipped into that people pleasing. So that is still something that comes up for me. And that then leads into procrastination. As I've mentioned before, I am a serious procrastinator. I put things off for fear of things being wrong, for fear of being judged, for fear of not being quite good enough, for fear of any kind of negative response to what it is that I've asked for, put myself forward for. So therefore, then I hold off from doing things because I don't want to kind of encounter that negative response. Because if I get that negative response, that then reinforces those feelings of not feeling quite good enough for being a fake. One of my mottos is fake it till you make it. And it's kind of sometimes thinking that you're going to get caught out for not being the person that you're portraying that you are, which is nonsense because I try to be as transparent as possible and talk about the things that I don't find so easy. Like I said, I can sit here, I can talk to people, I can stand in front of a room full of people talking about meditation and well-being. I can talk at a festival in front of 300 people and tell and talk and explain about how meditation is can change your life and how you can connect more deeply with yourself through the breath. I can talk to people like that. But I still have those tendencies to doubt myself. I still have that fear of not feeling quite good enough. And that's okay because that is part and parcel of who I am as well. And the beauty of having that awareness is recognizing when that's happening, but also having that compassion for yourself as well, because it's a journey. I don't know it if any point you'll become that polished, poised article that has everything together. And I don't think that's the ultimate aim because it's part of your growth. It's part of becoming all who you are destined to be. But you've got to go through this to get to that point. And I'm always a believer of that, going through things to make you stronger, to make you wiser, to make you more appreciative of who you are and what you've overcome and the challenges you may have faced. But you've still got to come from that compassionate side as well. So as I'm talking about this, it isn't about kind of putting myself under a magnifying glass and scrutinizing that. It's just that I have that self-awareness of what I'm doing. So it enables me to take a step back, explore what's going on, not necessarily get the answers, but at least have that reflection, recognizing how my perfectionism is turning up at the moment and how that people pleasing tendencies still rears its head, even though I have done work over the last 3, 4 years, still raises its head in other ways. Procrastination, I'm getting better. I realize that I do have a tendency to it. So now I'm like, okay, let's not sit on it. Let's do something and take that action, to take that step. Because if I sit on it, that holds me up. That then prevents me from moving forward. So it's recognizing that as well. So it's all about how you can be a little more compassionate when you are recognizing these traits coming up. I'm not saying these traits are negative. They can be positive if you can reflect and take those steps, those actionable steps. So my question to you as we close this episode is, how can you be a little more compassionate when you recognize people pleasing, perfectionism, and procrastination?